Hey everyone, this is my next video in the How to Read the Bible series that we've been publishing on Sunday evenings. Today I want us to focus in on the subject of Bible translations. All you need to do is visit Amazon or go into a bookshop and you'll see that there are a whole array of different translations of the Bible, and this can become quite confusing for people. In addition to that, I've observed over the years as I've been talking to people about Bible translations that there's a couple of really big issues that can become problematic for people. The first big issue is that on occasions people can want to have the most literal translation of the Bible, and they'll ask me a question like this: Adam, can you tell me which is the most literal translation of the Bible? And kind of contained within that question is the idea that being literal is the most important thing in a Bible translation. Now let me give you a story from when I was in Serbia with Vlada, probably 8-9 years ago. We were speaking at a Bible school together, and I was making reference to a book by Tim Keller called The Prodigal God. And the person who was translating for me from English into Serbian wouldn't translate the title of that book. And so in the break, we took some time out together and I asked him, why is it that you wouldn't translate the title of that book? And he says, well, the literal translation of that book would be The Prostitute God. Now here we have an example of how sometimes having a literal translation actually confuses the idea, because the whole purpose of the title of that book was that God is this kind of generous, almost wasteful God in the way that he gives his grace and his mercy to us. It has no reference to prostitution. And so I'd really like to encourage you that when you're thinking about Bible translations, being literal isn't always the most important thing. Sometimes getting to the heart of the issue or the meaning of the passage can be more important than being literal. And we'll come on to that in a few moments. The second big issue that I often come across is that some people will say to me, well, the King James is the only really accurate translation of the Bible. And again, I want to just encourage you, that's just not the case. In fact, there's been lots of manuscripts found since the King James Version was first translated, and those new manuscripts have actually helped Bible translators to actually tune up the accuracy of some of the newer translations. And so, how do we choose a Bible translation for us? I want to suggest to you that there are three big groups of Bible translations, and they kind of work on a spectrum. So the first big group are Bible translations that are aiming for a word-for-word translation. These would be the ones that are looking for high levels of accuracy when they translate each individual word. As I've already said, sometimes this can be problematic, like the situation that happened in Serbia. The other issue that can arise when you're just focusing in on word-for-word translation is that sometimes they can become almost quite unreadable or very difficult to read because they focused on the word accuracy, but they haven't focused on the flow. The second group of Bible translations would be translations that focus on thought for thought. This is where they're still thinking about the words, but they're trying to get to the thought that sits behind it. A little bit like with the prodigal God situation that we had in Serbia. A better translation would have been for the person translating to reach not for the literal word, but for a word that communicated the idea or the thought that I was trying to communicate. Wasteful, extravagant, something like that. And so there's a whole bunch of Bible translations in that middle section that are trying to think about thought for thought. The NIV would sit in that middle section. And then on the opposite side to the literal translations, you'll find a whole bunch of Bibles that are more paraphrases. And these are really trying to give you the idea that sits behind a whole section of text rather than just within a sentence. For example, the Message would be a paraphrase. They're trying to give you the feel and how it all sits together in a whole paragraph. And so my encouragement to you is below this video, I've put a document together that tries to map out some of the main translations on a bit of a spectrum, and you'll be able to see how they all fit together. I want to encourage you to have a look at that document and try to understand how they work. So my final question is this: how can you and I choose the best translation for us? In order to do this, we have to be honest about who we are. We have to take into consideration our own reading standard. If we find reading problematic, then we probably want to be finding a Bible translation that is going to be easy to understand, that is going to have shorter sentences, that is not going to be so complex. There's no point in trying to read an incredibly word-for-word accurate Bible if actually we don't understand it. I also want to suggest to you that the King James Version, although it's full of wonderful phrases, it uses a lot of archaic Old English, which is not very helpful if we're trying to understand it. And so I want to encourage you to try and find a Bible translation that is modern, that means that you'll be able to understand it more easily. And so I want to give you 3 Bible translations and show you where they fit. And these at least could be a start for you when you're looking for a Bible translation. If you're looking for a Bible translation that is going to focus more on word-for-word accuracy, then I want to encourage you to at least have a look at the ESV, the English Standard Version. The ESV really tries to focus on word-for-word translation, but isn't as focused on it on some others, so it makes it still reasonably readable. In the middle section for thought translations, why don't you focus on getting hold of an NIV, the New International Version? Is a really popular translation. That's the translation that we generally use on a Sunday at Kingsgate. If you want to explore what a phrase by phrase or a paraphrase looks like, then I want to encourage you to read the Message translation. It's a wonderful translation. It's designed to be urban, everyday language, obviously American language, and it sometimes can really help you to get into the passage. So Bible translations don't need to be hot topics. It's about learning where the different translations fit on this spectrum and using the appropriate Bible for what you're wanting to accomplish from when you read the Bible. Friends, go explore. Try out some different translations. See how they feel and how they sound as you read them.